Oh, junk is in there. Anyway, all right, here I am again, trying live. And welcome to T3, Truth, Transition, Transformation. This series came from a variety of conversations that I was having with people at the top of this year about how they're feeling, where they are, things they're experiencing, and there was a lot of discomfort. And that discomfort seemed to be coming from places and spaces where people needed to own something, own a truth, or to tell themselves the truth, or to acknowledge something that they'd been ignoring in the past. So from that came a lot of discomfort. And it was interesting because Cat Williams, whether he was telling the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, he certainly was facing something or helping other people to face things. Again, I'm not getting into whether it was true or not true, but that video also had the elements of what I'm talking about. One thing that I wanted to bring up tonight, because it is everywhere, or it seems to be everywhere, at least in this country, is this woman, Risa Tisa, who did a 50-part series that I have not seen and probably won't see, called Who Did I Marry? And how she married someone that told her lie after lie after lie and was deceitful. Now, again, I'm using her as an example because of how this video is everywhere. But what it reminded me of is how we can have so much hope for something that we ignore that feeling in our belly, or that situation that we normally wouldn't go for, or that comment that was made, and we would normally question it. But because we had hope for some situation, a relationship, a job, we ignore these things until they are blaring. A lot of people have a lot of different opinions about her and her journey. What is interesting to me is I think when people start to comment about other people's situations, one, you don't have the whole story. Two, we all have places where other people are looking at us and saying, I can't believe they did that, or I can't believe they're doing that. And so sometimes, the keyboard warriors make comments as if they don't have any areas where they need to evolve or to develop, or where they need to have grace. The other thing is, sometimes it bothers us what the person is going through way more than it bothers them. They're working through it. They put it out there for all of us to see. So obviously they have some comfort with where they are, not necessarily the process that they took to get there. But the hope thing is important, because sometimes we will, again, forego all the things that we know, which also then brings me to values, right? I talk a lot about values, and this is why this particular situation is why it is so critical that we identify, define, and live according to our core values, because what that does is it helps us bypass the emotion. So she may, actually, I'm going to take Risa Tisa out of it because I don't know her story, but there are people, men and women alike, who may be walking around with what I'm going to call a gaping emotional wound. It could be abandonment. It could be not feeling loved. It could be not feeling adored, not paid attention to, not taken care of, not being included. Whatever that thing is that some people carry around that is just huge. When someone comes along and they speak to it, they are like salve to that open wound. You've been walking around with it. It's been open. It's been oozing. It's been painful. And here comes this person that adores you, or appears to love you, or is paying attention to you, that is always there every time you turn around, so you never feel abandoned. Even when you feel like you're doing things that should make a person leave, they just don't leave. When we get that sensation of somebody that is putting that emotional salve on our emotional wound, oftentimes it feels so good to finally have that thing tended to, that we then don't pay attention to how they might have jabbed us in the knee with an ice pick, or how they might be pinching us under our arm, because this feels so good. But what happens over time is those other wounds also start to need attention. And so then that thing that they were paying attention to starts to not be as critical. So now we're putting our eyes on these other things and we're starting to see. Now, when we start to see those other things, sometimes we still want to ignore them because we want to go back to how good this felt. But in reality, this doesn't feel the same because of all those other wounds, but we're still fighting and fighting and fighting to get back to that original thing. Love bombing is an example of how that happens, but sometimes it's really just people intentionally or intentionally, right? Because sometimes the wounds are the people who are wounded are also attracted in some way to the wound that you have. So it's easy for them to give you the salve and for them to tend to it, but it doesn't mean that they have all the other things that you need. It doesn't mean that they're not going to lie to you. It doesn't mean that they're also going to take care of you. If the emotional wound that you're tending to is one of, feeling adored, then when they are telling little lies, or even when they turn into big lies, then you can want to return again to the thing that has been bothering you most, but now you're starting to see these other things that are falling apart, and it sounds like, from the clips that I've seen, it sounds like that's exactly what has happened to is Risa Tisa even her real name? I don't know, but I can imagine the even the title of her series, Who Did I Marry? I could imagine that as the truths were unfolding for her, the bombs that must have been going off in her head, and then even the questioning, the playback. There's some of the clips that I've seen. She talked about, well, it was COVID, and so there were certain things that were easy to let slide because it felt normal during that time. So many things, but it also sounds like it was a red or orange flag for her, but because she could rationalize it, she didn't pay attention to that thing in her mind or in her belly that said, that doesn't feel right. And I'm going to take that back to, it's the hope. So tonight's truth is really about understanding why it is that you keep doing what you're doing. What is it that's making you ignore the facts, the truths, and most importantly, to go against the values and standards that you've set for yourself? Are you rationalizing away things that are going to cause you regret on the other side? That's tonight's question. I think when I think about Risa Tisa, and not that she should have regret, because failure, again, like I said before, failure is not an indicator of your ability to be in a healthy relationship, to find someone that is healthy, but rather it is an indicator that something needs to change, that the process is faulty, not necessarily that you're incapable of doing it. So then there's really no need for regret. Regret also suggests that had we done something differently, that we would have gotten a different outcome. That's a story that we make up. We don't know. At least I'm going to say that I don't know if this is really part of my journey. Was I supposed to be here at this time doing this thing with this level of pain, whatever that thing that is paining me? In the same way that when I have high moments, right? Is that a journey I was going to take even if I had made a bad choice? Because we can all think of people who have made what we're going to call bad choices who ended up having the time of their lives. Why? Because maybe that was always going to be a part of their journey. So that's it. That's tonight's truth, is to think about areas in your life where you might be clinging more to the hope of an outcome, and where you might be ignoring some of the facts and truths about your life, about your circumstances, about the people, company, places that you're engaged with. Examine them. What somebody else mentioned, which I thought was an important point, which was when you have to constantly hide from everyone in your circle, when you find yourself retreating from the people who love you and normally care about you because I just don't know how to explain this thing, it's not that you should be ashamed, and it's not that what you're doing is right or wrong per se in the context of the world, but rather, to me, it speaks to your own shame. So that would tell me that I'm probably justifying and rationalizing something that I know in my spirit is not right for me, despite what other people say, because those same people, you don't do everything to please them. There are decisions that you make that you know are going to have your village up in a roar, but you don't care because you feel confident with the decision that you're making. But when you don't feel confident with the decision, and I'm not talking about, I know there are some friends that you have and you just don't feel like hearing their mouth. You feel confident, but you just don't feel like the back and forth. I'm talking about the people that you feel most authentic with. When you start to retreat and hide things, you may want to examine and take a look at why. Is it that you have the wrong village? Possibility, right? Or is it that you are not even comfortable with the decisions that you're making? And so you find yourself hiding from those people. So, all right, I was going to wrap it up. Are you holding on to the expectation of an outcome or to the hope of something happening to the point where you are bypassing your truth, your reality, the facts, your values, and your standards? Take a look at that. Examine it. And let's see if you come up with anything. I'm going to try to remember on the next one to ask questions about the last one. But again, I'm new to live. I'm very proud of myself for making this happen. So we moved to Wednesdays because apparently I like to travel on Thursdays. So thank you for joining me. Whoever showed up, who watches this after, I appreciate you. Truth, transition, transformation.